Warm greetings, Code Monkeys, and welcome back to CodedLockFilms. I've been hanging on to this one for a while, but it's time once again for another episode of Disney Direct DVDs.
Disney, oh Disney, you shaped most of my childhood, yes you mean a lot to me.
Yes, been a while since the end of Veds, but hey, at least I didn't go a full 11 months without making a video this time, so that's progress. I've been busy with work, I've been doing a lot of freelance jobs, a lot of my friends have been getting married, so that's cool. But you're not here to hear about that, you're here for the review. So I'll just say one last thing and then dive right into it. I would like to dedicate this particular video to another one of my fans, River City Girl 89 from Canada. Thank you, Melissa, for your kind words and your correspondence. I've actually been to Canada a few times, not really all that close to where you're from, but still, been to Canada, very nice. Clean air, polite people, and all that healthcare stuff is pretty nifty. And only the biggest hosers don't like Timbits. Very nice country. That was a terrible accent. So with that said, let us discuss The Lion King. The original Lion King is a pretty big deal as far as the Disney company goes. I'd actually argue that it's probably their most influential work outside of the Disney Princess franchise. And it's easy to see why, because it's a pretty damn good movie. Interesting characters, themes that take the young audience seriously, a memorable villain with memorable minions. It's pretty good. Like any movie, it has its problems, the biggest of which I'd argue is that the good lions are all coded as fairly white, where the evil hyenas are coded fairly ethnic, but for some reason people don't seem to talk about that much. No, the main criticism that I hear is that people say that The Lion King is basically just Hamlet with lions. And no, it's not. It's really not. There are bits of similarity there, sure, what with the whole element of the king's brother killing the king so he can usurp the throne, and then the king's son swears vengeance on his uncle, and I guess someone holds a skull at some point. Alas, poor Fuvu. I knew him. But beyond that very basic premise and conflict, the two stories are almost nothing alike. I mean, if you're gonna claim that Simba and Hamlet are basically identical characters, then, well, have you ever actually seen Hamlet? But anyway, why do I bring this up? Well, much in the same way that the first Lion King was loosely inspired by a Shakespeare play, so too was its sequel, Lion King 2: Simba's Pride. And somewhat less loosely this time around, I might add. Which of the Bard's works was this one inspired by, you may ask? None other than Shakespeare's classic tale of love, violence, and incredibly impulsive decision-making, Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, goody.
My thoughts exactly. So, let's take a long, stumbling victory lap around the circle of life as we take a look at The Lion King 2: Simba's Pride.
Code monkey, get up, get coffee. Code monkey, go to job. Code monkey, have boring meeting with boring manager Rob. Rob say code monkey very diligent, but his output stink. His code not functional or elegant. What do code monkey think? Code monkey think maybe manager wanna write goddamn login page himself. Code monkey not say it out loud. Code monkey not crazy, just proud. Code monkey like Fritos. Code monkey like Tab and Mountain Dew. Code monkey very simple man with big warm fuzzy secret heart. Code monkey like you. Code monkey like you.
So we actually open up with a song very thematically similar to The Circle of Life, a little tune called He Lives in You, which comes originally from the Broadway stage adaptation of The Lion King. I have mixed feelings regarding the stage production, but I actually think this song does a really damn good job of setting up the tone of this movie. First of all, this arrangement simplifies the original song by several notches, making the whole thing feel smaller and actually a lot more intimate than the Broadway cast recording. This fits the sequel well because, much like the opening number, this movie's story is a much smaller one than The Lion King. It has much smaller stakes and, even by appearances, a smaller animal population, which makes sense for an ecosystem that was recently ravaged by the drought and decay that we see in the original film. And I will certainly give them this credit, at least they had the good sense not to use Morning Report. God, that song is balls. But at the very least, the Pride Lands Tourism Board is doing well. See, the magic leaves from Pocahontas made the trip all the way from America.
Pumbaa, look at that little guy. A chip off the old block. And you gotta know who's gonna raise him. His parents? Okay, sure, get technical. But who's gonna teach him the really important stuff? Like how to belch. And dig for grubs.
Yes, he certainly will make a fine son for Simba.
It is a girl.
Girl!
Girl!
We move ahead a few years, or months, I suppose. How long do lions take to mature? Whatever, we move ahead a ways until we see that Simba's daughter, Kiara, has become a cub. Much like her father at that age, she's portrayed as a bit recklessly adventurous and not exactly fully aware of her own limitations. She's being allowed to leave Pride Rock on her own today, but only under the condition that she stays away from some place called the Outlands, which is understandable since there's no way in hell that she's level 58 yet. World of Warcraft jokes, going for real broad appeal here.
And stay away from the Outlands.
Nothing there but a bunch of backstabbing, murderous outsiders.
Zazu's right. You can't turn your back on them.
Really? How come?
Never mind. Just run along now.
Yeah, let's not tell her why the outsiders are dangerous. Kiara definitely seems like the blindly obedient type.
And stay on the path I've marked for you.
Follow the long, pungent trail of my piss! Simba, of course, knows that Kiara is bound to stray off the path, so he sends Timon and Pumbaa to look after her from a distance. And much like Simba's little excursion to the elephant graveyard, she finds herself immediately drawn towards the one place she was told not to go.
I wonder what's out there.
Ominous gongs by the sound of it. Timon and Pumbaa lightly admonish her for wandering off alone, doting on her constantly and referring to her as Princess Kiara, which she doesn't really care for.
I'm not just a princess, you know. That's only half of who I am.
Who's the other half?
You know, I understand that Kiara is not exactly bursting with personality, but maybe you shouldn't actively point that out.
Well, while you're figuring it out, let's eat! Ruffs! The other white meat.
Do you think it's an intentional joke that the one saying that is the creature made of pork? Well, Timon and Pumbaa get caught up in conversation, allowing Kiara to sneak off to the Outlands filled with all those dangerous outsiders, though disappointingly not a single lion named Ponyboy or Soda Pop. But there is this guy, a young lion cub by the name of Kovu, filled with the unearned sense of invincibility that seems to be universal amongst lion cubs in this series.
An outsider doesn't need anybody. I take care of myself.
Why does he call himself an outsider? From his perspective, wouldn't he be an insider?
Cool.
What is it with Disney movies and crocodiles? They were in Emperor's New Groove, The Rescuers Down Under, there's Tick-Tock from Peter Pan, there's Brutus and Nero from the original The Rescuers, Captain Crocodile from Robin Hood, the Croc from Jungle Cubs. Man, it wasn't really until Lewis from The Princess and the Frog that we got one who wasn't an antagonist. Although I suppose he's technically an alligator. What was I talking about? Oh, right, Lion King. So yeah, they escape the crocodiles and immediately stumble across the path of this lady. You can tell she's a bad guy because she's pointy. Only bad guys are pointy.
Zira.
Simba? Nala? Zira?
Bon voyage.
Mais c'est incroyable! Janet!
Dr. Scott!
Janet! Ah, Rooker!
Shrek!
Fiona!
Mom! Harold!
Plankton! Crabs!
SpongeBob!
Great! Now that we all know each other, get out of our Pride Lands!
Your Pride Lands? These lands belong to Scar.
I banished you from the Pride Lands. Now you and your young cub. Get out.
Oh, haven't you met my son, Kovu? He was hand-chosen by Scar to follow in his paw prints and become king.
But he's not actually related to Scar, even though he looks a hell of a lot like Scar. But he was named after Scar because Kovu means scar in Swahili, and he was chosen by Scar himself, despite the fact that he's about the same age as Kiara, and she wasn't even conceived until after Scar was dead. Look, I know it's confusing, just go with it.
Kovu was the last born before you exiled us to the Outlands, where we have little food, less water.
He was the last born, but he's not Scar's son, even though Scar was the only male in the Pride Lands at the time that Kovu was conceived. Okay, there's holes in this premise, I admit, but can we just move on?
We're finished here.
Oh, no, Simba. We have barely begun.
You gotta love how Simba just lets her leave despite the fact that he's got her vastly outnumbered and she's clearly threatening the life of his child. I suppose that's what happens when your king spends his formative years eating psychotropic bugs with a warthog and a meerkat. So after all that setup for the bad blood between the Montegrowls and the Capulions, Simba tries to relate a few life lessons to Kiara through a song called We Are One. It's a decent enough tune that's mostly held back by a slow start and really a slow middle as well. The choruses are pretty good, but the verses, well, they're not the worst, but they're fairly basic.
If there's so much I must be, can I still just be me? The way I am. Can I trust in my own heart, or am I just one part of some big plan?
So what you're saying is, Kiara is trying to decide between duty and heart. We move over to the Outlands, and just to really drive home that this is a sucky place to live, the very first line we hear is from a character voiced by Andy Dick. Viewer discretion is advised.
Kovu. Scar wasn't even his father. He just took him in. Oh, hey, Tawny. Where's little termite Kovu? The chosen one.
Okay, in all seriousness, I have to ask this. Why is the movie so insistent on this point? What does Kovu not being Scar's son actually accomplish? Because if he's not Scar's son, then whose son is he? Like I said, Scar was the only male in the Pride Lands when Kovu was conceived. He had to have been conceived before Scar's rule ended because Scar chose him personally, which means the kid was born before Scar died at the very least. But what is the point of emphasizing that Kovu isn't Scar's kid? Why not make him Scar's kid? Why not make him and his two siblings Scar's kids? It'd make more biological and temporal sense for one thing, but it also helps explain why Scar chose this kid to be his successor. Let's just say that this kid was chosen because he seemed like he was a lot healthier than Scar's other son. Boom, done, easy. Plus, we see that this guy here resents the hell out of Kovu, and that resentment would be a lot more understandable if it was his father that rejected him instead of some random prick who liked to hang out with hyenas. And oh my god, this movie just made me stick up for a character voiced by Andy Dick, and I am not okay with that! Actually, as hard as I've been on this, there is in fact one very good reason that the movie takes such great pains to remind us that Kovu is not Scar's biological son. And that's because if he were, that would mean Kovu and Kiara are cousins. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable too. Moving on, so Zira brings Kovu home and immediately tears into him.
What have I told you about them?
I'm sorry, Mother. Oh, she didn't seem so bad. Oh, I thought we could be
Friends? You thought you'd get to the daughter, and Simba would welcome you with open arms? What an idea! What an idea!
This lady is giving off some bad uncle energy right now, man.
Sleep, my little Kovu. Let your dreams take wing. One day when you're big and strong, you will be a king.
Good night.
Good night, my little prince. Tomorrow your training intensifies.
Oy, the close-ups on this woman.
But I dream a dream so pretty.
A dream?
That I don't feel so depressed, 'cause it soothes my inner kitty.
I don't want to hear about your inner kitty.
So you found yourself somebody who'll chase Simba up a tree.
Andy Dick, no, you don't get to sing. Gilbert Gottfried gets to sing. You do not.
Scar is gone, but Zira's still around to love this little lad till he learns to be a killer with a lust for being bad.
Why are you talking about nurturing a child's lust? I need an adult.
Payback time is nearing, and then our flag will fly against a blood-red sky. That's my lover.
So, let's go to the scoreboard. Scar's talk singing, 1. This lady, I feel icky! Anyhow, we move on to Rafiki's home where he's painting and talking to Mufasa's spirit, asking him for advice on what to do about Kovu and Kiara.
You have a plan?
You want Rafiki to play with some melons? Well, God knows Rafiki isn't getting any since you ate his wife. That was kind of a dick move, Mufasa. No, of course the plan is to get Kiara and Kovu together. Rafiki is skeptical, but he agrees to go along with it.
You are ready. Nice. Very nice.
Stop inspecting his physique. You are his mother. Oh god, moving on from the creepy lady. So Kiara is now old enough to go on her first hunt, but Simba, still being overprotective, once again sends Timon and Pumbaa to follow her. Of course, she ends up spotting them and gets mad that her father broke his promise to let her do this on her own. She runs off beyond the boundaries of the Pride Lands, and that's when the trap is sprung. Nuka and Vitani spread around some horrendous-looking CGI flames that funnel Kiara into a kill zone where she passes out from smoke inhalation. Kovu then pulls her to safety in order to gain the trust of the other lions. It does not go well.
Hey! You! How dare you save the king's daughter?
Rafiki is here to awkwardly move the plot along! So the other lions are pretty suspicious of Kovu, but because Kovu did just save Kiara's life, Simba decides to let him join their pride on a trial basis.
For now, I reserve judgment. We'll see who you really are.
Riff-raff.
Street rat! Sorry, it's a Disney reflex.
The fire rescue worked perfectly and Simba fell for it. Now, the closer Kovu gets to the daughter, the closer he gets to Simba. And once he has Simba alone...
This lady is intense. And hey, speaking of intense, check out the dream Simba has that night. What the hell? They brought James Earl Jones back for that? What is with this movie and its bizarre obsessions with bloodthirsty psychopaths and traumatic death? Oh right, Shakespeare. The next day, Kovu and Kiara get into a number of antics, and Kovu starts to see a world where there's more to life than murderous revenge and mothers who look at you like you're a piece of particularly sexy bacon, and he starts to go through a change of heart. They also have a few little romantic moments together, which, you know, Romeo and Juliet, I suppose. Though I've just had a thought. If Kovu is meant to be Romeo, does that make Nuka our Mercutio? Isn't Mercutio supposed to be the charming one? And you had him voiced by Andy Dick? That's like if you were trying to learn to play guitar, but instead you drank dumpster juice.
My father and I used to do this all the time. He says all the great kings of the past are up there.
Do you think Scar's up there?
You know, I'm no suave charmer myself, but I know it's generally considered bad first date protocol to bring up the dude who murdered your date's grandfather.
He wasn't my father, but he was still
part of me.
How? You were an infant, dude. How is Scar a part of you?
My father said there was a darkness in Scar that he couldn't escape.
Maybe there's a darkness in me, too. What if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the bad guy?
What are you, the Phantom of the Opera? What evidence do we have to support this darkness in me idea? You don't have darkness. What you have is a creepy mother obsessed with your lust. Call Cub Protective Services, go out for a wildebeest burger, and lighten the hell up. Getting real tired of your shit, Romeo.
Father, I am lost. Kovu is one of them. Scar's heir. How can I accept him?
Simba?
I was seeking counsel from the great kings.
Did they help?
Silent as stars.
Oh, I see how it is. Anytime you've got a problem, you show up here and expect me to walk down out of the clouds with the solution on a silver platter. But you never call just to ask how I'm doing. Well, you can figure this one out on your own, sonny boy.
So once again, Rafiki shows up to give things a little push in the right direction. To that end, he sings them a little song about a special place called, well...
Where the passion fruit grows sweet, and it's so divine that you lose your mind as it sweeps you off your feet. If you bend it without a worry or a care, it just takes two to make it true. Your heart will lead you there.
In all honesty, I like this song. Upendi, if you don't know, is the Swahili word for love, and this is a fun little upbeat tune that talks about a fictional place called Upendi that is the physical manifestation of the feeling of being in love. It's catchy, it's entertaining, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. I've got nothing bad to say about it. The next day, Kovu is trying to figure out how to come clean to Kiara about the plot to kill Simba. But how to make her see the truth about his past? Impossible. She'd turn away from him. The movie recycles a few things is what I'm getting at here.
Kiara, Zira had a plot, and I was part of it, but I don't want to be, because I love you.
After 24 hours, Romeo and Juliet. Simba takes Kovu on a walk to tell him the real story of who Scar was and what he did, but while they're away, they get ambushed by Zira and her hunting pack. Simba believes that Kovu set him up, and he manages to get away, though Nuka ends up dying when he tries to kill Simba after Kovu refuses to carry out the deed. And so, because Romeo decides not to fight, Mercutio does it for him, and Mercutio is killed. Like I said, there's a few more parallels in this one. Kovu shows up in the Pride Lands again, this time sporting a fresh wound just like Scar's, courtesy of his doting mother. Simba, because of the misunderstanding, orders Kovu exiled.
Father, please reconsider.
You will not leave Pride Rock. You will stay where I can keep an eye on you, away from him.
You don't know him.
Know him? I don't have to know him.
Kiara runs into the cave in tears and immediately sneaks out the back, meeting no resistance as she runs away, I might add. Pride Rock has got to be the most poorly patrolled kingdom in existence. They eventually find each other and partake in a voiceover duet as they frolic through the landscape. Never seen that before. Ah, sand right in the fresh wound, Kiara.
Let's get out of here. We'll run away together and start a pride. All our own.
Oh yeah. Kiara, are you picking up on Kovu's incredibly deft usage of sexual innuendo? No, of course they have to go back, because if they don't, their families will be divided forever. Also, they've got a war to stop, since Zira and her lionesses are taking advantage of the fact that Simba is weakened from the ambush and mounting a full assault.
It's over, Simba! I have dreamed of nothing else for years.
Boy, does she need a hobby.
Seriously.
Attack! Go for the eye!
Go for the eyes, Boo! Go for the eyes! Rusk!
The final battle is about to break out between Zira and Simba, but Kiara and Kovu arrive to stop the fighting.
Stay out of this.
A wise king once told me, we are one.
But they...
Them? Us. Look at them. They are us. What differences do you see?
Well, they're more pointy than us, and in Disney, pointy means evil. We've been over this. But even after all the other lionesses agree that they don't want to fight anymore, Zira refuses to give up the battle, big shock I know, and attacks Simba. Kiara leaps at her, tackling her off a cliff and sending them careening towards their certain deaths. So this is the part where Kovu assumes she's definitely dead and immediately downs a bottle of poison, right?
Simba! Simba, the river!
I could help, but I'll just wait here instead. Kiara tries to save Zira from falling into the debris-filled rapids below, but Zira fails to reach her, slips, and falls, looking strangely happy while she does so. Actually, there is a reason that she looks happy in that shot. Want to know why? Take a look at this unfinished footage of what was supposed to be the original ending.
Zira, come on! I'll help you.
Yeah, that almost happened. The crazy lady was so crazy, she decided to kill herself rather than let Kiara help her. They were not fucking around with Zira. So everyone goes home to the Pride Lands. Rafiki jiggles his balls in Kiara and Kovu's faces, which is maybe how people get married in the Pride Lands. I don't know, it's pretty ambiguous.
Well done, my son.
Getting them together was a good idea, Mufasa.
Course it's a good idea.
And with that, the movie comes to an end. And that, Code Monkeys, is The Lion King 2. Final thoughts? Well, I'll start off by saying that it's easily the best of the Disney sequels that I've reviewed thus far. Not exactly a high bar to reach, I know, but it is. It has the good sense to embrace the fact that the Disney direct-to-video sequels are always going to have lower stakes than the originals, and makes the smart choice to focus on a smaller, more character-driven narrative instead of a larger save-the-world narrative. It's well presented, the animation is pretty good, the music is just fine, and it doesn't fail to be what it's trying to be. So why exactly is it that I find myself still feeling so lukewarm towards it? Okay, we're gonna have to go back to the source material here, so bear with me. Romeo and Juliet is often thought of primarily as a tragic romance, but despite the title, Romeo and Juliet isn't actually about Romeo and Juliet. Not really. What it's actually about is the feud between the two families, the Montagues and the Capulets, told through the lens of the eponymous couple. This movie sort of tries to replicate that approach, but there are a couple of things that cause it to fall a bit short. First off, part of what makes the feud between the Montagues and the Capulets work as a storytelling device is that neither side can really claim the moral high ground. Neither of them is really more or less in the right than the other. I suppose you could make the argument that the outsiders have a legitimate grievance since Simba was kind of a jerk by exiling them to a land where they're basically doomed to slowly starve. But you've got to take into account why he exiled them in the first place. Remember, these are the lionesses that supported Scar, the guy who not only murdered his predecessor, but ran the kingdom so hard into the ground that all the plant life died and the food sources ran out. And yes, Simba is overly protective, but that doesn't really make him an amoral monster on the level of Lord Capulet trying to marry his daughter to a guy who sees her as a literal possession. It's pretty clear who the good guys and bad guys are here, you know? Second, because this is Disney, there has to be a happy ending. And this story simply does not work with a happy ending. The whole point of the ending of Romeo and Juliet is that it takes the horrible, unnecessary deaths of these two young innocents to finally make these two families understand just how stupid and pointless this whole damn feud is. If all it takes to stop the feud is for everyone to just calm down and have a nice little chat, doesn't that kind of undermine the feud in the first place? The biggest reason that a lot of people don't like Romeo and Juliet is because they don't find the romance believable, and thus they find it hard to get invested in the title characters. But in Romeo and Juliet, there's a lot more going on than just the romance, both from a thematic and character-driven standpoint. Romeo and Juliet has a lot of interesting and compelling side characters. Lion King 2 just doesn't. Now I'm sure some of you are asking, Jesse, how can you even say that? Simba, Nala, Timon and Pumbaa, these guys were the heart of the story in the first movie. But that's my point. They were interesting and compelling in the first movie. When you make a sequel, you can't just coast off goodwill from the first movie. That is lazy. Don't just rely on the fact that your characters were interesting in the first movie, make them interesting in this movie. Quite frankly, the only side character in this movie with any kind of pathos is Nuka. He's been rejected by his mother since the day he was born, constantly cast aside in favor of his younger brother, and he's so desperate for his mother's love and approval that he gets himself killed trying to prove he's a worthy son. And when the most sympathetic character in your movie is the guy voiced by Andy Dick, you have failed as storytellers! And believe me, this is not about me being some kind of Romeo and Juliet purist. I will openly admit that I don't really like Romeo and Juliet. Mainly because I don't tend to enjoy stories in which almost everyone involved is either a huge coward or a huge asshole. But it's just a much better told story than Lion King 2. And you might be thinking it's unfair for me to compare this movie to literal Shakespearean storytelling, but the fact is that this movie actively invites those comparisons by taking such heavy influence from Romeo and Juliet. If you're going to invite comparison, then you had damn well better make sure that you compare favorably. In Romeo and Juliet, surprise deaths and twists happen frequently so you can get invested in something other than the romance between the titular protagonists. In The Lion King 2, the romance is all we really have, and that's a problem, partially because the romance happens too quickly, and partially because, I gotta be honest, Kiara and Kovu are just too basic in terms of character. They're likable enough, I suppose, but they aren't engaging. They don't have unique personalities or interesting flaws. Kovu is essentially a broody for no reason archetype, and Kiara is just vaguely adventurous and somewhat irresponsible. Now, Simba was vaguely adventurous and irresponsible too, but what made him interesting was his struggle to come to terms with his personal demons and stop shirking his responsibilities. Kiara doesn't have personal demons, and she's not really old enough to have responsibilities of any consequence yet. There's nothing there to latch onto, so when the movie asks us to get invested solely based on whether these two will make it as a couple, the story falls flat. Like I said, this isn't the worst Disney sequel I've seen by a long shot, but I just can't bring myself to say that it's good. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, because I know there are a fair number of people who like this movie, but there it is. On the worth meter, I would give this movie a worth borrowing. Hope you enjoyed the review. Feel free to leave a comment telling me what you thought, and until next time, Code Monkeys, I will see you later. We take a look at... Spit takes are messy work. I'm glad I put towels down. For an ecosystem that was recently ravaged by the drought and decay that we see in the original film. I ran out of breath. Kiara definitely seems like the blindly obedient type. And the dog's barking, because she detected something happening in the house somewhere. Idiot dog. Zira fails to reach her, slips, and falls. Damn it. And you might be thinking it's unfair for me to tip... and the garage door's closing.